aware of each other. And are we being live streamed already?
Yeah, I figured I'd start.
Okay, I'm going to stop talking then. So
No,
I do. No, I mean,
you're doing actually some of the heavy lifting. So
right. So I also support the documentation for Loop. I do the Loop docs updates, and Loop and Learn has a bunch of documentation as well, and I help do some of that editing. And then I've learned a lot about GitHub. I'm supporting the continuation of free APS, which is an offshoot of Loop that a lot of people use. So I'm keeping it alive until such time as that's no longer necessary. But for right now, there's a lot of people that use it. Does that cover it pretty much?
Yeah, that covers it.
Okay.
Marion had a career. She's a physicist, and I think the day after she retired, she started working with us.
I started working about 3 months before I retired. I started working together. I did a lot of flight software and a lot of testing, and flight software and hardware, you are very strict about configuration control. So you can apply some of that to when you're managing multiple versions of code, needing to make them all work at the same time. You probably know a lot about that.
yes,
right?
I mean, different constraints, different environments. We're very modern in our architecture. I mean, very modern, fairly modern. But we have the luxury of working as a fairly tight group directly, not in a decentralized environment,
right.
Which is very different. And again, that's why I respect very much people that try to make, be it Loop or the Dana Lewis / Scott Lebrun version of, or the Android, the Open APS or Android APS. I mean, it's different challenges when you're trying to make people work together that aren't working in the same organization. I mean, it's great to have common goals and lots of energy, but it still has specific challenges. So it's very different.
Yeah.
Are you working with Dana on your version for digestive issues and like, okay, because she just posted something that I thought was brilliantly written about exocrine issues in type 1.
Yeah, I read it as well.
Yeah, it was so
it was interesting. It's very interesting. I mean,
yeah, I thought it was so clear, and I've been working with her on some things on aging and diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and I want to know how she tracked things, because it's very hard to track digestive issues because they tend to be somewhat random.
And there tends to be so much noise. I mean, noise in terms of mathematical things, sometimes you tend to eat twice, you think you ate twice the same thing, and the reality is
Joanne, can I let in the other people since we're live streaming?
Sure, you can let them in.
And as I said, Joanne,
Hi everybody. This is Zoe.
I'm absolutely not. I'm perfectly comfortable with having a very quiet, not necessarily extremely organized discussion, so it's all good.
What we normally do is keep people's cameras and video and mic off, but Priscilla and I were talking, for you, we can leave the cameras on. If you want to see who you're talking to, we'd be glad to do that, and whatever works best for you.
Let's keep it free flowing.
Yeah. Okay. Marion, Priscilla, can you just watch?
Now, microphones sometimes tend to be
someone needs to be muted.
Yeah. Hang on, let me see if I can mute them all. I should be able to mute all participants, but I've never had to do this. So, let's see.
Oh, not,
Okay. Marion, if you get a chance, can you just pop up periodically into YouTube and just see if there are any questions that come on from there as well? Thank you. Hey, Zoe, good morning. Nope, I got to stop that. I got 3 more minutes of morning here.
Hi,
Good afternoon.
good to see you.
Good to see you too. And so Marianne and Priscilla are admins here on Loop and Learn, and I just admitted Tina Hammer, who's been working with me on the speaker series. One of the things we've been talking about is starting to let kids see what the technology is that's interesting, because a lot of loopers are doing it for their kids, and let them see the science, let them get interested. Maybe they become the kid that finds the cure. Let them feel a little optimistic and understand that the community is here, as well as their parents pushing buttons for them. So kind of a slightly new orientation. Okay, you got that. All right, thank you, Priscilla. I think I have a minute to go. Erik, do you have any questions for me?
Not really. I did see the email earlier on about the various questions that were around. Again, happy to have any open discussion and let it free flow. And if they're challenging, all the better.
Okay. Okay, I need to figure out how to get mics off. Okay, hang on 1 second. Can someone figure out how to mute everybody?
I did mute David. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just I'll be right back. I have to go away off screen for a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay. What I normally do is an introduction, and I do a share screen, which I will actually start now, and then I will turn it over to you. Zoe said she wanted to make a kind of a disclaimer at the beginning, which I thought was kind of brilliant. So we'll do that as well. So I will introduce her, even though I didn't write her introduction. And I'm going to give this like 20 seconds, and then we're going to start. So get a sip of water. Here comes Lane. Okay. Lane said some very nice things about you on one of my posts about Diabeloop. So it should be a fun discussion. Okay.
Oh, speaking of Lane, there he is.
There he is.
Hello. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Yeah, it's broadly. Hello there.
Good day. How about that?
Good day. That works. All right. I am going to start if everyone is ready. Here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Loop and Learn T1D Speaker Series. We're back. 2022. This is our first event of the year, and this is really exciting for me because it's a company I've been watching for quite a while, and I think it's exciting technology. We have Erik Huneker, I think I pronounced that correctly, you can correct me, CEO and co-founder of Diabeloop. They're developers of innovative solutions integrating therapeutic AI to automate the treatment of type 1 diabetes. I want to remind you, as we always do, this is in the looping community, that the Loop app is a do-it-yourself closed-loop algorithm. This presentation is provided to assist you in understanding the technology. I'm off schedule on this one, regarding your own diabetes management and the technology that's out there. You take full responsibility for building and running your own system, and you do so at your own risk. And please remember that the Loop app is not US FDA approved for therapy. Just a little bit of advertising. The Facebook group Loop and Learn also has an amazing website. We get tremendous traffic on starting Loop, announcements about looping issues, iOS versions, Loop versions, hot tips and topics. And please, if you go there, bookmark it and also sign up for the newsletter. If there's any critical issue, we send out a newsletter pretty immediately. And this is stuff you will want to know. We don't want to see you come the next day and say something happened, which we had put out in an urgent newsletter. So, and I also want to say a special shout out, he's not on the call, but to Mark Oldham, one of our admins, who's been handling and fending off the onslaught of the cyber attacks we've been getting. He's been keeping us up and running. It has been a constant battle, and somehow we think we're important. So thank you, Mark. And upcoming, we're starting to load our calendar. And thank you, Tina Hammer, for all your help on this. Dr. Laura Nally is coming back for a repeat visit. She's amazing. She's a type 1 or T1D. She's a looper. She's a pediatric endocrinologist at Yale University School of Medicine. And she's going to talk about T1D, looping, and exercise. She also has some expertise in T1D and menstrual cycles and pregnancy. So she's just a hotbed of information. We also have Chris Wilson coming up. He's a T1D and a leading researcher and just an amazing speaker, interesting to hear. His presentations have wonderful cartoons and excellent analogies, and you'll learn a lot. His question is about the correlation between ISF and your current blood glucose. Really interesting topic. And then as we get into March, Erik Verhoff from Seagrove Partners, they do a lot of research into the technology that's up and coming, and you'll learn what's current and what the status of that and what's up and coming. I have.
If I can just give a shout out to Chris Wilson on that one.
You bet.
He gave a shout out to Diabeloop because of a poster that we posted maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, something like that, about that specific topic that we actually found out probably from a mathematical standpoint, maybe 2.5 years ago, that we posted on a poster and a publication. So yeah, he's right. I mean, everyone who has had T1D kind of knows it, okay, from an anecdotal perspective, but we've done part of the theory, he's done part of it. We actually haven't talked directly, which kind of a shame, we probably should, but yeah, totally in line with what he says.
His tagline is glucose genius. I think he's not far off, and he's just fascinating to listen to. So that'll be great. And then I have a co-host, I think, I don't know if I have Teresa, but Tina Hammer, raise your hand. She's the mom of a type 1 his name is Reese. He's 11 years old. And he actually recorded a video on an introduction to looping. It's on the YouTube channel. It's absolutely precious and so well done. He's only 11. He did it when he was 10. And she's been helping me out organizing the speakers for the upcoming year. Let me tell you a little about Diabeloop and Erik, and then I'm going to turn this over to Zoe to give you a little further information. And I'll do this really fast. Diabeloop has developed a self-learning algorithm that automates and personalizes the treatment of type 1 diabetes. They are headquartered in Grenoble, and they stand out for their work because they design their products with input from people who actually use the products. Isn't that novel? It makes me really happy when I even get to say that. They have been working directly with the DIY community, the hashtag We Are Not Waiting community. Once again, that's novel. That's very encouraging. They're listening. They're actually listening. They have modes and features called Zen Mode and Privacy Mode, which Erik will tell you about. And most interestingly, they actually represent the model of interoperability. They actually are doing what we keep asking for, which is, let me use the device I want, let me use the CGM that I want. It's their software that works on different devices. It should be interoperable. Somehow our US FDA doesn't move that forward, but should, and it should be the standard for all of us. We should have that choice. And Diabeloop, thank you for doing that. That's amazing. Erik is an engineer who graduated from École Polytechnique. Did I do that okay? Is a tech and science enthusiastic and has been working in the medical device industry. In 2015, he founded Diabeloop and has been co-managing since 2016. He's got a strong support team working with him. And I think you're just going to be fascinated with what you hear. We also have on this call Zoe Heineman. Trying to figure out how to unshared at this point. There I go. Do that. There we go. And Zoe, I'm going to make you as speaker because you work in the U.S. for Diabeloop, and please tell us what you'd like to share before we turn this over to Erik.
Sure. Well, thank you, Joanne, for inviting us to be here today. And we are listening, and we will keep listening. So we look forward to coming back in the future and updating you as we have updates on our progress. I just wanted to make an opening statement that we are in the FDA process. It's an ongoing process. As everybody knows, it's been slowed down by our current national emergency, and we are in the process of getting a market clearance that will allow us to bring our first generation product to the US. We don't have a timeline yet, but we won't be able to give specific dates. I know that was one of the questions that the community had for us. And also, we're not here to promote or market a specific product in the US. We're here to talk about our company and our technology, and we can talk about the features that are available in the product in Europe. Just wanted to explain that. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Erik likes to do things fairly interactive. As we mentioned, he actually listens to the community. So given that and letting it be as interactive as we can, you're certainly welcome to leave your camera on, your video on. We're going to ask you to turn your mics to mute just so we don't pick up a lot of background noise, but he is interactive, and if you have questions, you can certainly unmute or raise your hand, and we'll figure out how to do that and have you join. So at this point, I just want to turn this over to Erik, and thank you so much for working for us on the time. We're excited to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you for that. It's not that bad. It's only 9 p.m. here. Although I did get back from the volleyball, so I'm a little bit red because I just take a shower. So that's it. So thank you for that. You mentioned the DIY and listening, and I mean, for me, it kind of is normal, and I can't quite understand why people wouldn't work with people who are actively developing things for their own pathologies and issues. But I mostly worked with the OpenAPS and Android APS people, although I did spend quite a bit of time as well with people that were involved in the loop side of things. And again, they're not different, but yeah, a little bit not the same thing with Howard and other people from the loop side of things. One thing is that, funny anecdote, back 3 years ago, Scott and Dana had developed one specific piece of algorithm for dealing with a specific issue. Okay, and then we're like, that's interesting, and we had our own version implemented, and so we took their code that was in Java, wrote in Python, which is where we wrote all simulators and everything. And funny thing is, their code actually worked better than our code for dealing with that specific issue. So currently, Diabeloop, for about, I want to say 7 or 8% of the time, runs on a code, so not 100% of the code, obviously, but 7 or 8% of the time runs with code that is inspired. So it's not a direct copy and paste, but it's strongly inspired directly from the code that was written from OpenAPS. And so we basically took their code and it worked better. So we junked ours and took theirs and wrote from it. And from that, we kind of took some and gave back to them. We we wrote a few feedbacks to them on how to improve what we thought, how to improve their code and how to take it. Same thing from we used to have our own remote monitoring solution on how to look at things. And then we took, shoot, I'm sorry, what's his name? Not Loop, I'm sorry, brain fart. The remote monitoring that Loop uses.
Night Scout?
Not Night Scout, the other one. What Howard and has been using. Anyways.
Tide pool?
Tide pool.
Tide pool, thank you. Sorry, had a brain fart there. So Tide pool, we talked to them and asked to use their code. Said, yeah, for use it because their solution was better than ours. So we wrote, so Diabeloop is currently the biggest non-Tide pool contributor to Tide pool because we wrote all the internationalization and kind of quite a few improvements to Tide pool because it makes sense. I mean, so we basically took a look at our own solution. It's like, okay, what we have is worse than what you've developed, so we'll just scrap ours and contribute to yours and adapt to yours, and it's better, it makes more sense. And it's just pragmatic, looking at things and how can you make things improve and advance. And that's how we've looked at things from the beginning. I was looking at a list of the questions that were asked by Joanne and some others that I got from the email, and I think that's most of it. From YouTube, Jessica, where in Europe? So currently Diabeloop, so DBLG1 is being used in 6 countries in Europe. France, Germany, Spain, Italy, Netherlands, and Switzerland. There's a couple of other countries that are coming. So we're currently working with actively approved with 2 pumps. So the Vicentra pump and the Roche Insight pump. There's going to be more pumps coming because, again, you know, any compatible pump, it doesn't make sense not to integrate them as long as they're reliable and have the right kind of communication. Currently, back to the question, we only work with Dexcom, first of all, because Dexcom is the only one that's been approved in the US for dosing. And the US on that one, kind of, I mean, Europe and US are different from a regulatory perspective. One is not better than the other. They're just different. And the US, the fact that the US has approved Dexcom for dosing, has not approved Abbott for insulin dosing, means that for us in Europe, it's actually more difficult to use Abbott product. It's not directly yes or no, but yeah. Do you think Abbott will open to work with Diabeloop? Part of it is confidential, okay? Some things that I can't comment on. What I will say is that there's about 3 times more people worldwide using, 3 to 4 times more people were using Abbott products than Dexcom products. So when you're trying to develop a product, I mean, worldwide, there's about 40 million people that need to use insulin every day. What Diabeloop does, what we're good at, okay, is physiology, diabetes physiology, and the data science and algorithms, including simulators, including everything that goes around it. When you say that, it means simulators, regulatory, writing code, writing a test for it, everything around it, okay? So what we're good at, our job is physiology and data science / algorithms for insulin dosing. That's what we do, what we're good at. Making cannulas or making CGMs, nope, not our job. And so what we want to do, what we're considering is that there's 40 million people worldwide that need to dose their insulin. That's who we're talking to. Those are our users. It's not the 300,000 users in Europe of specific insulin pumps of XYZ. It's the 40 million people worldwide. Of those 40 million people, there's about roughly, I want to say 5 to 6 million that use CGMs currently. Of those 5 to 6 million, 3/4 use Abbott, 1/4 use Dexcom. That will rise a lot, okay? When you see Dexcom launching Dexcom 1 in Bulgaria and Turkey, etc. When you see Abbott sending it, I mean, it will become, CGM will become the de facto way of measuring blood glucose for most of those 40 million, 3 to 4 to 5 years from now. And so once you've got that, CGM being the biggest factor, and then you've got pumps, of course, but pumps isn't the only way to dose insulin. You've got pens, and with pens and with connected pens, there's things you can do with algorithm as well. So that's what we're talking to. Have you incorporated accessibility features in your app? We'd love to. We've talked to the association of, I'm sorry, I can't remember the proper name, visually impaired people in France. It's something that we want to do, and probably something that we'll try to launch that by the second half of 2022. We wanted to first kind of have enough people working on the system before working on that. Now that we have quite a few people working with the system with Diabeloop that is commercially launched, now is the time to do it, because it doesn't make any sense to ignore those people. It's something that's needed, okay? And by the way, I mean, don't take this wrong. When a company is trying to make this, you know, it's not, by definition, most of the people that are in the company, if not all, are not visually impaired. So you got to be able to somehow bring the people that know what that means inside the company to define and design the product. That's not easy, but it's something that I'd like to do. It's kind of a personal challenge, if you will, that I've talked to, when I talk to the French people and the Association of Visually Impaired, of which maybe 1/3 are visually impaired because of diabetes in France. Okay, and statistics may be different in the US, I don't know. In France, that's about what they're saying. It's kind of the thing where it said, okay, right now, they contacted us maybe 2 years ago, and it's like, okay, today, not the right time. First, let us get enough people on the market. Once we have that and have people using the product, then we can work with it. Now, as soon as we have enough funding as well, then it's something that's going to be interesting, because, I mean, it seems complicated, but if you go beyond the, oh, it's one more thing, etc., kind of bullcrap, it's actually not that hard to actually work on it. As long as you, and I mean me, I'm not visually impaired. I just need to remove my blinds and say, okay, let these people design it what it should be. I mean, I talked with a few people that were on it, and it's like a foreign language to me. I mean, when you look at people interacting with smartphones that are visually impaired, it doesn't make sense for you as someone who doesn't have vision problems. I mean, sure, I've got contact lenses, big deal. That's not the issue. It's odd. And you need to remove your blinds and let those people work with it. And you also need to hire the right people internally that can themselves remove their blinds and work with it. But beyond that, it shouldn't be that hard. No reason to. Bernadette, I may take you up on that one. I don't know who you are, but yeah, it's something that is kind of something that I want to work on. What's
But
your
we
training?
also have, Priscilla Fogel is one of our admins, could be useful. And we have one or two other that we're aware of on Loop. Because when we were doing the website, we had to make sure it was easier for people with visual issues. So we've got some people we can direct you to as well.
Sure. And again, I am not, we need help on that, because again, it is not easy to design things for people that you don't get to see the world as they do, literally in this case. And so you can't quite imagine. If you can't imagine, you can design it for them. So you need to let them design it for you as a company. And that is kind of hard, actually, even if it's technically not necessarily all that hard. It's a design problem. It's not a technical problem. And the design problem means mostly a communication issue. Woohoo! What is your training and support model? Today we have, there's not one answer to that question. First of all, it depends on the local healthcare model. There are certain countries where you've got diabetes centers that do all the work. And in certain countries, even, it is forbidden to device manufacturers to talk directly to patients, for example, in France. So there's not one model. So you've got to think about designing the right tools to be able to train the users. First of all, you got to be able to think about how you design your product, okay? You want, what we've looked at is how to design a product that doesn't require the expert diabetologist that's been working for 20 years on closed loops. You want something that is simple enough for a general practitioner with a little bit of training to use. That's kind of how we designed it. I'm not saying it worked perfectly from the first time, okay? We needed a few iterations to get it right, but that's how we've tried to design it. Because the reality is that out of those 40 million people, there's probably only 2 to 3 million that are followed by specialist diabetologists, which means that a good 90% plus are not followed by specialist diabetologists, but either by GPs or by very generic, not necessarily very well trained diabetologists. And that's a challenge. You know, when you're talking to people every day that are specialist diabetologists, and you're trying to design a product that's not for them, but are designed for pretty much everyone. So that was some of our challenges. So yes, we do have tools to be able to train the end user directly. And when we design the tools, you know, you're talking to the end user. Some of those end users are more trained than diabetologists. Others don't understand left from right in diabetes. Then you're talking to nurses. Some of them are high experts, better than the doctors they work with. Others, well, maybe not so much. And then you're talking diabetologists. Some of them have their own mind of how it should be. Some of them are really experts, and some of them, well, they've got many things to work with. And so you're trying to design a training tool that's trying to address that whole spectrum. And actually, what we decided at the end is that whether you're talking to a user, to a nurse, or to a doctor actually doesn't matter. What you're talking to is what kind of level of expertise do they have with diabetes? That matters more. And so it's more of a level of 1, 2, 3 in diabetes, rather than am I talking to a diabetologist, to a nurse, or to a user? Because it's not, in diabetes, it's not that easy to separate all three. Taking questions in order. Are you concerned with the Abbott Dexcom lawsuits? Not necessarily at this point. I don't claim to be an expert enough. I just know that, again, you've got millions of people using one product, more than 1 million using the other. It's not like they're going to stop using it. So
Can I jump in at this point, Eric, and ask if you have any kind of little set of slides, because most people haven't even seen what you're talking about and what the screen looks like and what it actually does. Are you able to take us through that?
Sure. Let me open it up. I did not prepare specific slides, but I'm going to prepare and share our generic slides on that one.
If you need help, Eric, let me know. I can pull something up.
I'm just going to use our standard slides. That'll be way good enough.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to answer some of the direct questions on the chat here.
Sure.
Hey, Zoe, can you say what you're typing, not just type, because there's people on YouTube who can't see your chat?
Sure, sorry, that makes sense. Okay, Elmar, I was trying to respond to Elmar, who asked where the system was available. I don't know if they missed Eric's earlier statement that it is available today in several markets in the EU, including France, Spain, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Austria, and Belgium. I think that's everything. Yep.
Can you see my screen in the meantime?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So Diabeloop's main product is called DBLT1, so Diabeloop Generation 1. So we connect to a CGM, Dexcom today, to multiple insulin pumps. In this particular picture, it is the Kaleido pump. So it's a kind of patch pump or with a very small tubing. And we have currently a dedicated handset for cybersecurity reasons. Cybersecurity, I'm not saying that any app on your own smartphone is necessarily dangerous with regards to hackers, okay? What I'm saying is that a specific hacker could target the company to be able, if it is currently on a random smartphone, what we know for sure, having tried it, is that yeah, well, there's enough ways to hack it that you really don't want to be a company that's open to that. So we currently have a dedicated handset. It looks like a smartphone, feels like a smartphone, but it's a dedicated handset. We realize it's one more thing to carry. That's really not a good thing. But currently, that's what we have. We're working on two things. One, a smartwatch, where the algorithm is integrated. That has the advantage of being a dedicated, but also has additional sensors, which means you can do more things with regards to physical activity and all kinds of other interesting things to improve the algorithm with. And the other is that we are working on an app which the latest iOS and Android versions will allow you to work on that is secure enough. But even there, just not the latest version. You need more work than just the latest versions in order to make it secure enough.
Do you have a timeline on that? Because I'm sure everyone just sat up and listened.
2023, latter part of 2023 for both.
Right.
The smartwatch and the app, hopefully. Now, careful. That's kind of what we're shooting for. we've got, penetration testing and cybersecurity testing are not exactly a very reliable forecasting science, to put things mildly. So that's what we're shooting for. We have reasons to be optimistic about it, but yeah, we'll see. And worst of all, if one of them fails, the other is going to work out well. We do have our own web platform for visualization, and anyone that's good use Tidepool. Yeah, this is our own version, but you're going to recognize Tidepool instantly, clearly, because again, we used to have our own. You know what? Tidepool is made better, so we scrapped our own and used Tidepool's version of the visualization. Now we've diverged lately with Tidepool because Tidepool had their own goals and on improving with regards to closed loops, etc. So back 2 years ago, we contributed a lot of code to Tidepool, not over the past 18 months, not because we don't like Tidepool, just because different goals, different organizations, and it was more work to try to merge branches than to try to make it work. So that's what it looks like physically here. This is kind of a home screen. Now, what's interesting is that in order to start, the algorithm only requires weight, total daily dose, and typical meals. When I say typical meals, doesn't mean a nutritionist comes by and measures your meals. It's you as a user, your own measurements of what you think. And it doesn't really matter if you undercount or overcount one specific meal. What only matters is that it's consistent. The errors need to be consistent. Okay, so whatever, just take your best personal guess. That's good enough. And from there on, the system's going to start to work and then do the self-learning. Self-learning, that's where it gets a little technical. The heart of the algorithm, you do have a safety layer that's going to looking at risk of hypo situations. That's going to run first. So that runs every 5 minutes, kind of in sync with the CGM. If there's no hypo risk, and a hypo risk would mean first cutting off the insulin, and if the system determines that you're going to get hypo no matter what, it's going to tell you, hey, take this many grams of carbs. That's a feature that many people like because they don't have to think about should I take 10 grams, 20 grams, 40 grams, whatever. The system tells them how much. If there's not a safety risk, you go to the insulin decision piece, which first of all, you've got an actual machine learning algorithm. That machine learning algorithm runs on a physiological framework, but it's actually a heavy-duty machine learning. It's the millions of differential equations per patient per day. So kind of for self-learning, that's going to be looking at your past 24 hours and try to look at how your physiology has evolved over the past 24 hours. Machine learning is awesome, but you know what? It doesn't work perfectly all the time. And anyone that's used image detection systems or whatever knows that. And in our case, it's actually the case too. So we do have a technology, which is a patented technology that says, when is the machine learning working or not? And sometimes it's not. It doesn't understand the situation. And that's called a supervisor. And that supervisor sometimes cuts off the machine learning and hands it over to expert system. Expert system is really a glorified decision tree that takes what would a diabetologist or an expert patient do in a given situation, given information. How much insulin you have on board, what's your glucose trend and level looking like. From those information, okay, what should you do? So it's kind of a decision tree. It's robust, doesn't make big mistakes. It's not as good on average, but it handles odd situations well. On top of that, you've got the long-term self-learning. Long-term self-learning is all about patterns, patterns about day versus night, about breakfast versus dinner, about weekend versus week, about menstrual cycles for women, basically patterns. And those patterns, going to try to look at those patterns and re-inject them into the blue piece that works every 5 minutes. The self-learning pattern recognition doesn't work every 5 minutes. That runs more like 3 times per day on average. Now, our system, every person is different, okay, which has 2 consequences. First of all, you need to be able to do self-learning in order to adapt to each person, because each person's physiology and lifestyle is different. Physiology, lifestyle, and personal preferences. And again, when I say personal preferences, it's quite a wide thing. You know, every person that's living with type 1 has different relationship to hypos, to a fear of hypers, sustained or not, physical reactions to hypers or to hypos. There's such a wide variety, so you can't design a system that's perfect for everyone. You've got different cars for different people. You've got different settings for different people with type 1. And so you need to be able to do the self-learning, but the self-learning is not enough. We tried. We really tried. It is not enough to do just self-learning and let the self-learning work. You also need to be able to give the people control over what they need. And sometimes the control is going to be in the hands of the user. Sometimes it's going to be the doctor. And again, it depends. Sometimes it's the user, sometimes the doctor. So it means you can set the target, you can set the hypo limit. Because again, some people are very comfortable running at 65 milligrams per deciliter. Others are absolutely deathly afraid as soon as they hit 80. Different people, different attitudes. Our job is to design a system that works for everyone, not to judge, not to whatever. And so you've got your target, you've got your hypo limit, and you've got your aggressiveness. Aggressiveness means, do you want the algorithm to take you back to the target quickly, with the risk of sometimes overshooting and requiring rescue carbs? Or do you want the system to take you back to the target quietly in a gentle slope, which means your average glucose level isn't going to be quite as good, but on average, the number of interruptions caused by rescue carbs or hypos is going to be much lower? And again, that's a very personal decision. It's not up to us to decide that. You need to be able to leave that up to the user. So that's kind of the heart of how our system works. Did that answer your question, Joanne? Is there any questions around that? You're on mute, Joanne, I think.
Joanne, we can't hear you.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
No, thanks. No, that's great. I think we have a better sense of it. Absolutely love the option to make it work the way I like mine to work, which is different than my friends like theirs to work. I think that's amazing. I have not heard that anywhere else. I would love to know a little bit more about your next product that has to do with digestive issues or hypersensitive people.
So this is, I don't necessarily have slides on this one, but I'll just talk about it. Back 3 years ago, so we'd done our first clinical trials, and then one of our diabetologists that we work with said, yeah, I've got a few patients that really have, I mean, there's no such thing as a stable diabetes, okay? We get it. But there's people whose diabetes are really horrendously unstable for multiple reasons. Doesn't matter. And when you're designing an algorithm by design, you're making trade-offs between slopes and decisions. Okay, and Lane's going to be comfortable and know what I'm talking about, but it's those trade-offs mean that you're designing a product for most people. Well, people that have dialysis, specific types of gastroparesis, slow digestion, specific antibodies, anti-insulin antibodies, which I'm not sure you're familiar with, but there's a few people that have, particularly people, I'm sorry, Joanne, but that have a little more history with diabetes and that have used to use human insulin or even pork-derived insulin. They do have some anti-insulin antibodies that are quite nasty in how they react, meaning they take up kind of, when there's a lot of insulin in the body, they kind of pick it up when insulin is not as active, and they kind of release it when there's not much insulin in the body. So there's multiple reasons why you can have that highly unstable diabetes. But what we decided is that, what the heck, we'll try to design and switch some of the core pieces of the algorithm to try to match that and open up some parameters. You've got to think that Diabeloop, underneath the hood, what you're seeing here is like 5 parameters that you can tune: target, hyperlimit, etc. Under the hood, there's like 192 parameters, most of which are rightfully so totally impossible to understand because they're engineering things. I'm not saying it's right, but it is what it is. Now, what we decided is that we would open up some of these engineering trade-offs specifically to doctors. And in certain cases, we even adjusted them so that it would make sense for doctors. We try to make as much sense for the doctors in order to adapt for specific situations. Specifically dialysis, gastroparesis, and I'm going to call it hormone-induced instability, even though no one really knows if it's truly hormones or if it's something else, but I'm just going to call it that. And that has allowed us to truly tune the system for a limited number of patients. Okay, there's currently only probably 13 or 14 people using that system. But those are people that were eligible for pancreas, islet transplantations, or implantable pumps, or something that were both extremely invasive and or costly. So far, it's worked extremely well. It requires some, I don't think it's ever been seen, that kind of level of interaction between engineers that understand the algorithm and doctors. And I think the regulatory, to be absolutely honest, I think the regulatory framework doesn't exist for that. Because basically you've got engineers that are making decisions, that are recommending options on algorithm settings that most doctors don't truly understand. And it's true. You can't expect a doctor to understand that level of algorithm intricacies. But you know what? It's necessary.
Do you think there's going to be a new medical professional who is not a medical doctor, who is not a PA or a nurse practitioner, but who has a serious background in machine learning and algorithms and AI, who can actually consult within a group practice?
I've talked about this with a couple of people who are officially trainers in specific endoscopy surgery tools. And I just happen to have a neighbor that works on training for those kind of very high-tech endoscopy surgery tools. So there are surgery tools that very modern type of surgery tools. And he kind of says the same thing that I do, meaning that when you're high tech enough, and not for the pleasure of being high tech, but just because you have the requirement to have a high tech to get the solution there, oftentimes doctors, they know the physiology, they're not equipped to handle that kind of tech. So we're not unique. There's other professions currently where you have officially trainers, okay? The reality that they're in the surgery room and they give recommendation to the doctors, and doctors officially take the decision. Reality, the doctor always says yes because they don't understand what's happening. So it needs to happen, because currently Europe, US, same thing. You know, we're kind of blindsiding. They're just trainers, the doctor deciding. Well, bullcrap. The reality is that there needs to be this kind of new profession of complicated medical devices where you need to have both a medical training and a technical training in order to be able to understand and make decisions on that. And again, what Diabeloop is doing is not unique. You have other types of medical devices that already exist that have the same kind of problematic.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And certainly type 1 diabetes could be the poster child for needing that new paraprofessional. I don't even know if it's para, it is a professional that has maybe comes out of medical school, but does the additional engineering portion of it. That would be fabulous, because the doctors do not understand. Diabetes educators do not understand.
Again, engineers shouldn't pretend to understand everything from a patient physiology side either. It's difficult. I'm not saying I have the solution. I'm just saying is that currently we kind of have the solution for this specific issue here. In a generic systemic way. I do not pretend that our solution is easy to generalize.
This is a lot to take in. This is why I wanted to hear you. I want to open this up. We don't normally do this, but I want to open this up for if anyone has a burning question that just wants to speak and wants to ask a question, please feel free to do that. I do have a question about what we can do in the US. Any wisdom you have to help us, to help you with the FDA.
Right now, I can't think of anything specific, but that's a very generous offer of the question to Joanna, what can we do to help? As we move forward and get into more advanced stages with the FDA, it could be helpful to have maybe a letter from the community stating why it's so important to the community to have some of these features, some of these options, some of these solutions available to relieve the burden that currently patients are carrying alone. So I don't know, Erik, do you have any suggestions about what they could do to help us?
I mean, to be absolutely bluntly honest, on both sides of the Atlantic, I'm kind of frustrated because be it in Europe with MDR, where, I mean, it's like the definition of shooting yourself in the foot. And in the US, where, I mean, I used to talk with Courtney Elias and some of the people at the FDA, I mean, directing diabetes, and they were great people. They knew what they were talking about. I mean, literally. And they were listening. And I'm not saying the current people are not great. Absolutely not. It's just that I don't really know them because the entire team changed over the past 18 months or 2 years. And I mean, you all know here better than I do, or as well as I do, is what it takes to learn what diabetes means. It is not easy between infusion sets and insulin times and differences. And you take two people that have the same weight, the same age, the same sex, and you know what? Same gender, sorry, French word. Same gender, and they have different insulin needs, different, I mean, everything can be different. And so knowing that, learning that takes time. There's no such thing as someone that knows anything about diabetes in 3 to 4 months. And so, yeah, there's a lot of change, and that's difficult. That's making things extremely difficult.
Yeah.
And in Europe, the situation is not much better. So that's kind of a big difficulty and extremely frustrating, especially since things are moving fast and faster and faster. And if you make things move slower, reality is that it hurts patients and it hurts innovation and it makes things slower.
Absolutely. We feel it. I mean, you know, Lane certainly started this all with hashtag we're not waiting, and the frustration is enormous. What I find so interesting about Diabeloop is you actually have a product and it's on the market. We've been hearing other AI solutions and they're not on the market, and they haven't been for years and years. So what's exciting to me is I could move to France and actually get your product. Which I have mentioned. My husband said, let's go to France. It's a product that's there and it's being used, and it's very exciting to hear about.
Yeah, thanks. Quick mention to Chris Wilson, by the way. Thank you for shooting out on us on the insulin sensitivity versus glucose levels. We should talk, because we put out that poster a few years, maybe 18 months ago or something like that. But we've got some new data that it's not that we don't want to publish it, it's that we're too busy working on the product to publish it, literally. That we should talk somehow and see how we can exchange.
Absolutely. I can either get in touch with Zoe or whoever to get a connection made.
Sure.
Just a quick question, because I don't know, what is your connection to type 1 diabetes? What is your interest and why?
I don't have any personal connection with type 1 diabetes. Okay. To be brutally honest, I was at a point of my life where I was intellectually bored with many things and looking with something intelligent to do with my work and brain. I happened to run across Guillaume Charpentier, who was a diabetologist that I ran across because of a friend of mine that was working on a project, whatever. And I basically jumped into it. My only quality in this, I think, is being able to listen fairly well and try to put myself into some other people's shoes. I will never pretend that I know what it is like to be living with type 1, okay? But I've talked to enough people, and I do pretend that I've listened to enough people to try to imagine different types of scenarios and what it means to be living with, enough that I can design products for it. And I've kind of jumped into it and spent way more hours than reasonable reading and listening and thinking and designing and everything.
I had a researcher tell me years ago that the pancreas is complicated, so very complicated, it's only second to the brain. And it's a very close second. It is complicated. This disease is beyond complicated and constant and unrelenting. So thank you for your interest in it. We benefit. So thank you. I see a few more questions coming in. from the YouTube channel.
Then an online tutorial available. We discussed this literally a month ago to make it open to everyone. I don't know what the status on that one is. Currently, it's open to anyone that has kind of a healthcare professional number in France and Germany and whatever.
Eric, are you talking about the webinars?
There's two things. You've got the webinars and you've got the e-learning tool. The
Coaching platform?
yeah, that one.
Okay.
We talked about it, and I'm sorry, Sunday evening, I can't remember what the decision was and where we're at. The whole point is that we wanted to make it available to everyone. We want to double check regulatory status, etc., but it should be, in theory, available to everyone. In what time frame does the pattern recognition work? Anyone that knows anything about data science or anything like that will know that there's not an easy question to that one. You've got to balance two things. One is the kind of noise that you're going to have. Two, how different are people and how fast do you need to be able to react to different people's body needs? Three, if a person goes skiing for a week, how do you make sure that your system doesn't overcompensate the week after? When I say go skiing, has gastro or has the flu or whatever, goes for Christmas or, Thanksgiving. I mean, Thanksgiving, if you have a self-learning algorithm that reacts every week very fast, and it's going to learn for Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving, you're in trouble. So the answer to that is that fairly pragmatic. You got to know the difference between people and the bodies. Okay, so basically, the first few weeks, when you put the system on people, you want to be able to learn fast and react fast to big differences to the average. After that, you want to react and learn slower, not too slow. And you don't want to take 6 months into account because you know what? Winter versus summer, people are different, bodies are different, temperatures are different, physiology are different, food is different. So you don't want to take a year into account and only take your last year. In France, we talk about exponential learning. It means a fancy word for saying that your older learning has less weight than your younger learning. But basically, so what time frame does a pattern recognition work? It's looking at months worth of data, but the weight it gives is different depending on if it's old data or new data, and how long has a person been using the system. Does that make sense? Yeah, I guess. Flynn says yes, it's yes. How many people are using our system? For multiple reasons, I can't say the exact number is. I'm just going to say a lot. I mean, multiple thousands. Yeah. System currently. Don't understand the question. Elmar, I didn't understand your question. System currently. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Your system currently. So yes, that's multiple thousands. Would the NHS contract for reimbursement? Reimbursement is a funny world. Yes, Chris, absolutely. Day versus night, for example, is actually a much more systemic and long-term pattern than, for example, meal sensitivities. Meal sensitivities do tend to change a lot, summer versus winter, for example, or even in the winter, depending on the week it is. And again, I'm talking about skiing or Thanksgiving or Christmas or just winter flus or winter gastros, they mess up your data like no tomorrow. Whereas, for example, day versus night is much more stable. Or menstrual cycles for the women that do not take a pill, I mean, specific types of pills, tend to be much more reproducible over time. No, did I miss any questions?
I think you got it. And one more chance if anyone wants to jump up and ask a question. Otherwise, we'll go ahead.
Oh, Marion Barker said that the people on YouTube can't see the chat. So is there any way that the people on YouTube could ask a question?
Yeah, we have a chat running in there, and Marion's been bringing them over. So
oh, okay, perfect.
I think Lane
Thank
had a
you.
question.
Thanks, Marion.
If I were a genie and I could give you 3 wishes, Erik, what would they be?
Faster insulin. I want to say faster. It's faster in and faster out.
Amen.
I mean, when you're trying to design a system, which is a closed loop, where your main feedback is variable 1, 2, 3 between people, 1, 2, 3 for a given person, and oh, by the way, it's totally messed up. It's kind of hard. That would be my number 1 wish. My number 2 wish would be clearly easier, I mean, not easier, better regulatory oversight. Not easier, better. I want tough regulatory oversight. I do not want a random person using your Python science library, taking glucose data and saying, well, that's easy, I'll just run it and get it over with. That seems like a very bad idea. So I'm not saying easier, I just want better. I want the people that audit us currently in Europe and the people that talk to us in the FDA asking the right questions in the right timing. That would be my second wish. My third wish, well, you know, someone find a goddamn cure for this thing. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, well, I'm just answering a few more questions here, but I so very much appreciate all your interaction with us. I think this is fascinating. I will have this recording up on YouTube, hopefully by tonight, and I will send you the link as well as the questions in chat. We are here to give you whatever feedback or help you need. Loop and Learn is a very proactive community, as are all the DIY loopers. And thank you for your passion with this. I've been watching you for a while, but you're still doing it. So thank you. And I hope you have a good evening. Stay healthy, please. And we'll be talking real soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, and everyone here tonight or this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoe.
We'll keep in touch.
Cheers.